5,000 years ago, someone built these tombs. Then they vanished. Across Denmark, Sweden, and northern Germany, thousands of megalithic tombs still stand in the fields. Stone monuments weighing dozens of tons, built by a civilization with no written record. For generations, archaeologists assumed the people who built these tombs were the ancestors of modern Scandinavians. The DNA proved that assumption completely wrong. The builders were almost entirely replaced, their genes nearly erased from the region within just a few centuries. And the population that replaced them became the ancestors of everyone we now call Scandinavian. This is the story of the largest population replacement in Scandinavian prehistory. And it happened before history began. The tools tell part of the story. Polished flint grain sickles, the technology of a farming people. They cleared the ancient forests of Denmark and southern Sweden for farmland. Pollen cores from Danish bogs record the transformation. Forest pollen drops, grain pollen surges. Their longhouses were the largest structures in northern Europe. Communal living for extended families. 1,000 years of farming. 1,000 years of building. Then it all ended. The settlement sites go silent around 2800 BCE. The abandonment was rapid, widespread, and until ancient DNA completely unexplained. Their pottery was functional and decorative. Each vessel stamped with identity. They built ritual enclosures too. Circular earthworks for communal gatherings and ceremonies. The passage graves were not just tombs. They were places of ongoing ritual contact with the dead. These were sophisticated people with complex beliefs, and the DNA erased them. What happened inside those tombs tells us about a society that valued community over individuals. Around 4000 BCE, a new way of life arrived in southern Scandinavia. Farming. The funnel beaker culture, named for their distinctive pottery, spread across the entire southern Scandinavian region. They were the first farmers in Scandinavia, and they built to last. The passage graves required extraordinary communal labor. Boulders moved without metal tools. These were not temporary structures. They were engineered to stand for millennia, and they have. When archaeologists began extracting DNA from skeletons inside these tombs, they expected continuity. The first results came in 2012. The funnel beaker farmers plotted firmly with Anatolian Neolithic populations. They were Mediterranean, genetically closer to Sardinians than to modern Swedes. They had darker skin than modern Scandinavians, dark hair, brown eyes. The DNA predicted appearance matched populations thousands of kilometers to the south. The genetic distance between tomb builders and modern Scandinavians is enormous. This was not a subtle finding. The original farmers were a completely different population. Side by side, the faces tell the story, the numbers confirm. The question was no longer whether replacement happened. It was how fast and why. Gave the timeline. For 1,000 years, these farmers dominated southern Scandinavia. They built monuments. They buried their dead. Then, around 2800 BCE, something happened, and within a few centuries, they were gone. Not their culture, not their monuments, their DNA. Gone. The replacement came from the east, from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, roughly 4,000 kilometers away. The corded ware culture, in Scandinavia known as the battle axe culture, named for their distinctive weapons buried with the dead. They buried their dead individually in single graves. With weapons, everything changed. Burial practice, pottery style, settlement pattern, social structure. Archaeologists debated for decades whether this was migration or just ideas spreading. The ancient DNA settled the argument. In 2019, Malmström and colleagues published a landmark study of ancient genomes from Sweden spanning the Neolithic to Bronze Age transition. The funnel beaker farmers carried almost exclusively Anatolian Neolithic ancestry. The battle axe people carried predominantly steppe ancestry. The Y chromosome data was even more extreme. Male lineages were almost completely replaced. The men who built the tombs left almost no surviving male lineages, from 0 to over 70% steppe ancestry in roughly 500 years. One of the fastest and most complete population turnovers documented anywhere in prehistory. The burial sites tell the same story. Collective tombs give way to individual graves. The pottery changed overnight in archaeological terms. No gradual transition. One tradition replaced another. When pots change and DNA changes together, that is migration, not diffusion. The new burial tradition spread across all of southern Scandinavia within centuries, from the southeast to the northwest, following the same direction as the genetic wave. Every new excavation added to the evidence. The horse changed everything. Steppe migrants could cover distances that took farmers weeks in just days. The earliest horse remains in Scandinavia appear alongside battle axe culture artifacts. The two arrived together. Wheeled transport appeared at the same time. New animals, new technology, new genes, a complete package. It was not just people who migrated. An entire way of life moved north. The toolkit was transformed. Polished flint replaced by early metalwork, stone sickles by herding equipment. The question became how does a population that built thousands of stone monuments get replaced in a few centuries? 3 mechanisms have been proposed, and the DNA supports all 3 operating simultaneously. Plague. Ancient plague, older than anyone expected. In 2018, researchers discovered Yersinia pestis DNA in Neolithic Scandinavian skeletons, predating the steppe migration. The plague lineage was ancient, possibly the earliest form of the disease that would later cause the Black Death. If plague swept through the funnel beaker communities before the migrants arrived, it created a vacuum, a weakened population meeting an expanding one. The mathematics of replacement becomes straightforward. The Neolithic plague strain was different from the medieval one. Less transmissible, but potentially just as lethal in a population with no immunity. The pathogen hid in dental pulp for 5,000 years, waiting for technology sensitive enough to detect it before the steppe migration. That changes the entire replacement model. But plague alone doesn't explain the Y chromosome pattern. The near total replacement of male lineages suggests a migration that was heavily male biased. Maternal DNA tells a slightly different story. Some Neolithic female lineages persisted, meaning some local women were absorbed into the incoming population. The women survived in higher numbers than the men. A pattern we see everywhere. This pattern repeats across every major steppe expansion. Incoming men, local women incorporated. Scandinavia was not unique. It was part of a continental event. But in Scandinavia, the replacement was among the most extreme. The third mechanism was economic. Pastoral herding can support larger populations per unit of territory than early crop farming. The steppe migrants brought cattle, sheep, and horses alongside their crop knowledge. A diversified economy that was more resilient to crop failures. More food, more children, more people on the landscape within a generation. The funnel beaker communities could not keep pace. Plague, male migration, and economic advantage. All 3 working together. Stable isotope analysis confirmed the dietary shift. Grain farming replaced by dairy and pastoral products. 2 different economies, 2 different peoples, the same landscape at different times. They brought new genes and an entirely new way of living. The settlement pattern shifted from dense villages to dispersed pastoral camps. Mobile pastoralists cover more ground. They spread faster than fixed farming communities. But the replacement did not erase the physical evidence of who came before. The tombs still stand, and inside them, the bones of the original builders still hold their DNA. Alan Toft and colleagues in 2015 analyzed 101 ancient genomes from Bronze Age Europe. including multiple Scandinavian sites. The results confirmed what Malmström would later detail at higher resolution. The Bronze Age populations of Scandinavia were genetically transformed. The Viking ancestors arrived from the steppe, not from some ancient Nordic homeland. Modern Scandinavians carry approximately 50% steppe-derived ancestry, among the highest proportions in all of Europe. The blonde hair, blue eyes, and tall stature that the world associates with Scandinavians are traits that increased in frequency after the steppe migration. The original Scandinavians were darker. The appearance we now call quintessentially Nordic is the appearance of the replacement population. Natural selection accelerated the change. Light pigmentation alleles were under strong positive selection in northern latitudes after the steppe migration. Blue eyes went from rare to dominant in less than 1,000 years. Selection and migration working in the same direction. Evolution did not create the Nordic look. Migration brought the raw material. Selection finished the job. The Viking look is not ancient. It is the product of a Bronze Age migration. But the story is more complicated than simple replacement, because not everyone in Neolithic Scandinavia was a farmer. Alongside the funnel beaker farmers, a parallel culture persisted. The pitted ware culture, hunter-gatherers who lived on the coast, genetically distinct from the farmers. Their DNA linked to hunter-gatherers who survived the Ice Age. 3 populations sharing the same landscape. 2 of them would be replaced by the 3rd. The farmers and the hunter-gatherers both lost. The steppe migrants replaced them both. The pitted ware vanished from the record at the same time. Both cultures ended within centuries. Modern Scandinavians carry a small but measurable percentage of both older ancestries, perhaps 10 to 15% from the original hunter-gatherers, a few percent from the Neolithic farmers. The rest is steppe. The replacement was not absolute, but it was overwhelming. That is what survived of the people who built the passage graves. The genetic history of Scandinavia is thoroughly documented by ancient DNA. Dozens of studies, hundreds of ancient genomes. Every data set tells the same story. When every study agrees, the replacement is settled science. A ghost gradient remains. Southern Denmark retains slightly more Neolithic farmer DNA. They traded amber across hundreds of kilometers, built networks spanning the Baltic. There is an irony in this story that cuts deep. The monuments the funnel beaker people built became symbols of Scandinavian identity for the people who replaced them. 19th century nationalists claimed these megaliths as proof of an unbroken Nordic heritage. The DNA shows the opposite. The builders looked nothing like the people who claimed them. The artifacts the farmers left behind outlasted their genetic legacy by 5,000 years. Ground-penetrating radar continues to find new sites beneath modern farmland. Some estimates suggest fewer than 10% of all funnel beaker sites have been excavated. 90% of the evidence is still underground, waiting. Every petrous bone extracted from a funnel beaker tomb is a potential breakthrough, but their descendants did not inherit them. The story of Scandinavian prehistory is not one of continuity. It is a story of serial replacement. First, the hunter-gatherers who recolonized after the ice, then the farmers who brought agriculture from the south, then the steppe migrants who replaced them both. Each wave built on what the last left: coastlines, tombs, genes. Every population thinks it was there first. The DNA keeps proving otherwise. Modern Scandinavians visit these tombs as heritage, built by people barely their ancestors. The identity we inherit is cultural. The ancestry we carry is biological. 2 different stories. The monuments belong to everyone nearby, not just to the builders' descendants. New sites are still being discovered, each one a time capsule from a vanished world. Every bone is a potential genome. Every genome another chapter of a forgotten story. The technology gets cheaper every year. The silences in the record get smaller. The research continues. New genomes from the transition period are being sequenced every year. Each one adds resolution to the picture. The central finding will not change. The builders were replaced before anyone could write a word, confirmed by ancient DNA replicated across multiple independent studies. The builders vanished. Their tombs survived. Their genes mostly did not. The next time you see a photograph of a Scandinavian dolmen, remember who built it and remember who replaced them. Sources in the description. That next video is on screen now. 5,000 years of silence. The stones remember what the genes forgot.